So, all right. So let's circle back then to like how you think about and how you talk with your patients who come with you or come to you with a problem of BPH. Like what might that consult look like? And you can just start me out with either like how you start working the patient up from like history and physical to lab work and imaging, which you kind of already touched on.
Yeah, I mean, any patient comes in, we do a history and physical. We follow the AUA guidelines. As an interventionalist in the space, just follow the guidelines. It's super easy. You do a little documentation. Typically, we want to go through the general workup. You do a symptom score. You should definitely be doing an IPSS on all these patients. I get IPSS and SHIM on all my patients. And if I offer behavioral modification, that's a key word. We do behavioral modification first. You get up a lot at night, pee? Come on, stop drinking 4 hours before bed. Okay, see how you do. You don't do any better, or your score is really severe, we'll start an alpha blocker usually. And then I don't use finasteride. I do discuss to the patient as an option, just because there's a black box warning of increasing high-risk prostate cancer,
Hmm.
decreased libido, moodiness, breast enlargement. Once guys hear that, they're like, I'm good. I think we'll just stick with these other medications. I can get with better erections with tadalafil or daily Cialis and my alpha blocker. I use alfuzosin usually commonly because it has a less side effects, 5 times less than Flomax.
Okay.
So that's a decrease in the amount of the better side effect profile. Flomax works amazing, and you can use 2 pills of it and really can get people through a difficult time. But we go through the medical therapy.
If I can jump in, how long do you trial like conservative treatment before you move on to anything else?
Conservative treatment is a minimum of 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I really, if your medical therapy won't, you should wait at least 4 weeks. If you're using stuff for people who have the storage symptoms like urgency, we're using mirbetriq or something to control that, that's 6 weeks. So those are kind of the run in. And once they get through that, we do talk about the different treatments. I say where your gland size is. You have a normal size prostate, less than 40 grams. That's not BPH. It's probably anatomical. So we have the MRI imaging, or their PSA is greater than 3. They already have an MR. And then we look at the structure, what it looks like in the prostate. 40 to 80 is a little smaller than really large prostates, 80 and higher. And I break down the treatments in those groups. I mean, PAE, I do it on anyone usually 50 and up if they're interested, unless they have a high bladder neck where I'm like, this is probably not going to help you. I can see on your MRI that your prostatic urethra is tipped so far forward that you're really not going to gain a lot by shrinking the prostate. It's more or less how the prostate and the bladder are connecting. So I see some of that. I try to counsel on that. And some are like, I still want a PA. And I would say half of them have a really good result, but I try to tailor it best for that. But the other treatments, I have a partner, Tamir Yamani. He does the most hold-ups in New York. He's excellent. We'll talk about the HOPE trial with Bhatia, I guess, put that paper out comparing HOLEP to PAEs recently. But I go through HOLEP, TERP, ITIND, Resume. UroLift, that's the only thing I tell patients I don't endorse at all. It was one of the most common procedures performed in urology for outlet obstruction because they could say you don't need a Foley. But if you take metallic ferrous-based fasteners and staple the prostate open, how do you think your MRI is going to look after that? It causes a lot of artifact. In Europe, they did so many of them. They're like, you have to have a baseline MRI first so we understand what we can take into account, what the artifact shows if your PSA does go up later. So I've never been a big fan of UroLift. Moving on from that, HOLEP works really well. Robotic simples, I used to do them. Open simples, used to do them. I don't really do them at all. If they have some common large bladder stone, they can have a HOLEP and a stone removal, or a robotic simple and a stone removal. So those are in there. But sometimes I do a PAE, then I go take the stone out. Patient's extremely happy. And I just do, multimodal management. But PAE, I try to discourage some patients because they come looking for that first. I'm like, let's hold up. Let's try the workup and work our way through it. It's kind of algorithmic, right? We have the guidelines. There's
Sure.
like a nice flow chart. And you make sure you don't miss things like cancer along the way in the workup. And that's kind of like a good gestalt of where I am in my treatment algorithms. But I do send patients some for HOLEP. Some people that have terrible retention, and I don't know if their bladder functions. They get urodynamics sometimes. You come in, I had 1,000 in my bladder. I didn't even know it. And I was in the ER. I was in renal failure. I would lean on a debulking procedure for a patient like that.
So hold on, one thing you mentioned that it was just not on my radar was the relationship of the prostate with the bladder neck, and that you said sometimes like if you get the MRI beforehand, which is maybe another good point to why it's maybe a good idea to get the MRI pre-procedurally. Can you kind of drill down on that? Because I wasn't actually following.
So, if we're looking at the sagittal plane, you'd like to
Mm-hmm.
see the penis goes in and then goes up into the bladder. That hook, if it goes up, because your bladder squeezes and pushes out like a ramp. So if it's like hitting a half pipe where that lip is really high, your bladder, when it compresses, almost like self-obstructing itself. Like, so it's pushing it forward. If there's a median lobe there, it'd be like slapping the door shut. So you have
Okay.
these people that say, hey, I pee, I have to relax, and I have to pee again. It's because the bladder neck's pushing forward from behind that median lobe, and it's just ball valving. And I tell patients, I'm like, hey, this is probably more anatomical. Especially the guys that are like, I've had problems since I was 30, doc.
Hmm.
I don't think it's going to be a big prostate in your 30s. It's, do you have a bladder's function, or is there something anatomic going on? And we're able to assess that. One thing I don't do a lot of is cystoscopy, look in myself, because I have the MR. I can look at it. I don't need to go to see what the anatomy looks like before the procedure. When I worked at another place, I'm not going to say where, but the administrator is like, do you know what the CPT code is for cystoscopy? And I was like, yeah, it's 52000. And he's like, okay, you don't order any of those or bill for those. I was like, I do some. He's like, you do the least out of everybody. I was
Yeah.
like, because I have an MRI. Why do I have to do that unless I'm screening for bladder cancer or a hematuria
Sure.
workup? But if I'm just dealing with LUTs, it's in the algorithm, right? Why? Because it's a big RVU generating thing people do in the office. It's that imager versus the urologist. There's a different way to look at things, and it's neither side's wrong.
Sure. Sure.
It's
Sure.
just an administrator that looks at your revenue is not happy, but otherwise,
Well, he's telling me you got to look at downstream revenue, like look at those MRIs, like those are MRIs that are getting ordered. I mean, that's not nothing.
yeah, but that's in the Department of Radiology.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. This is true.